let's get started. It's great to have so many people on the call from all over the world. And hi and welcome to this Ignite webcast. And my name is Josh Topal, and I'm a program manager for Office 365. And Ignite events are a series of technical workshops for IT professionals and Microsoft partners. And so these Ignite webcasts will address different technical subjects and scenarios that are beneficial to anyone who wants to increase their knowledge of the Office 365 suite. So today we're really excited to have Nathan Winters leading our call. Nathan has been working in IT since 2003 in various roles, and now Nathan is at Microsoft as an Exchange Technical Support Specialist. So in today's webcast, Nathan will be showing us how to take advantage of Microsoft Office 365 for email and protection filtering with Exchange Online Protection. Today's session provides, again, a really great opportunity to hear directly from a Microsoft employee and learn about some of the new features and releases for Office 365. So today's webcast will be about an hour, and we're going to leave a few minutes at the end to field questions from anyone on the call. So you can go ahead and type your questions into the link chat box below, but I would say please hold them till the end, and we're going to have an exclusive 10-minute Q&A section of the call. So one last thing is that we are recording today's session, and the slideshow presentation and the video will be available soon online on the original Ignite blog post and on the Ignite website itself. And you can also find it on the Office 365 YouTube channel. But here's a link that I just pasted in for the original blog post. But that's it for me. And so Nathan, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Josh, and hello to everyone on the call. So, as Josh says, we're going to talk about Exchange Online Protection, and I want to start here really with this quote from Gartner. Really talking about the concept of the level of threat which we're facing in the email messaging space, and the fact that it's a growing challenge for organizations to manage this on their own. And that's really where Exchange Online Protection fits into the picture. Microsoft has got some of the world's leading industry experts around security, and you'll have seen in the press recently around the FBI and Microsoft working together to take out a wide variety of botnets, and this is something that Microsoft has been involved with over the last few years. And so leveraging that kind of experience and tying that together with a cloud service that can really instantly update and constantly be iterated on to secure the email messaging traffic coming into your organization is something which not only gives you peace of mind, but also gives you that additional layer of security that we need in everyday life these days. So with that in mind, let's have a look at what Exchange Online Protection really is doing and some of the key capabilities and functionality. To start off with, we're looking at 1 billion messages per day through the service, which is actually interesting in itself. And I talked about the work we're doing to kill off botnets. A few years back, we were seeing 3, 4, up to 5 billion messages per day. And so a significant reduction in the amount of spam that's coming through, or amount of mail in general that's being generated and coming through the service, simply due to that significant reduction in the botnets that's generating it. So we're looking at around about 1 billion messages per day, and around 700 million of those are spam. So there's a significant percentage, 70% odd there, that are spam. So what exactly is Exchange Online Protection? Well, it's Microsoft's hosted antivirus, anti-spam solution, and it's fundamentally one of our flagship services. Prior to Office 365 taking off in the way that it has done recently, it was absolutely one of the biggest services out there, as I say, handling that huge amount of messages per day. It provides multi-engine antivirus protection, and unlike the engines perhaps on the desktop PC, which maybe are updated once a day, these engines can be updated very frequently throughout the day, constantly evolving and bringing in the best technology from various different vendors to make sure that we're providing a high level of protection there. And again, equally, multiple layers of anti-spam protection, which we'll talk about in a moment. In terms of the way that its service is laid out, we've got a geographically load balanced system. So as far as the customer is concerned, an outage in one area would be invisible essentially. So we really can operate to a 5 nines SLA in terms of uptime, which means, I think it's somewhere around five minutes of downtime a year potentially. And actually we've exceeded that SLA for the last 2 years running. So really, almost no downtime whatsoever. And we've got that ability then to queue up mail in the scenario whereby perhaps your mail system is down on premises, or perhaps your link is down so that you cannot connect to the service. So really the ability not only to provide a huge amount of uptime for the service itself, but also to take that load when, for example, your on-premises system is down. Now, Exchange Online Protection has massively transformed from where we were previously. So the previous product was called Forefront Online Protection for Exchange, and this was based on technology that we acquired from the FrontBridge acquisition in 2005. So the transition that we've gone through in the last few months with the release of the Wave 15 version of Office 365 has really brought together a new streamlined administration console in the Exchange Online Protection world. And this means that we're now administrating Office 365 and Exchange Online Protection all from the same place. And again, it ties up with Exchange 2013 on premises as well. So if you have that familiarity with the new Exchange Admin Center, then managing Exchange Online Protection is going to be very, very straightforward. Equally, another major improvement is the joined up policy engine. So we're now running all the policies within Exchange Online Protection using transport rules. So again, very familiar, very, very simple. And this is all backed up then with telephone support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year at no additional cost. So this is fundamentally part of the service that we offer. So that's really just setting the scene. In terms of how this then operates, one of the key things is that, of course, by stopping the viruses and the spam messages outside your network, fundamentally we've got the ability to save you money on bandwidth, or save customers money on bandwidth. And equally, we can protect your outbound mail as well. So, really there is this sort of peering relationship between an Exchange organization on premises and Exchange Online Protection, whereby inbound and outbound mail, we've got benefits of protecting both. And by protecting your outbound mail, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we do that, we can protect your reputation if, for whatever reason, one of your PCs, for example, gets compromised and starts sending out sorts of messages that would be blocked. So in terms of setup, it's very straightforward. We've really got the ability to get you up and running with the service in minutes. It takes a very short time to set up a new instance of Exchange Online Protection, and it's then a simple case of adding and verifying the domain that you want to use, and that takes the form of entering the domain name and then essentially going in and verifying that through the use of a text record in the DNS zone. So once you've done that and you've proved that you actually own that domain, we can then go in, set up the basic policies, but generally you can run out of the box with really good results. And then if you want to go and add customizations to meet your own sort of business requirements, you can. But really, in terms of getting you set up and running, we can do that with the creation of the tenant and then pointing that MX record to the service and really creating then connectors to connect into your Exchange organization on premises. And it really is that straightforward. We can be up and running very, very quickly. So that's obviously the simple elements, and then taking things a step further, if we want to make use of users and groups and attributes within Active Directory as part of our rules that we set up to do filtering, for example, and we can do all sorts of things like sending certain traffic out of certain connectors or blocking mail for a certain group, for example. If we want to do that, then we need to take things a stage further and then set up directory sync. And again, in a change from where we were previously with the FOPPE product, we now have making use of a single directory synchronization engine, which is obviously the engine which comes with Office 365. So we've really joined these things up, and what you'll see throughout this presentation, and as you look into Exchange Online Protection in general, is that it is now very much integrated into Office 365. So to be clear, that doesn't mean to say that you have to be using Exchange Online. You can use Exchange Online Protection purely to protect an on-premises environment, and that's a standalone sort of deployment. But fundamentally, we're using that technology and the data centers and so on that are used by Office 365 and getting the benefits of not only the level of documentation and experience, but also obviously the benefits of simplicity in terms of those that are deploying in a hybrid type relationship with on-premises and cloud mailboxes. Okay, so I think that sets the scene really, just looking at, what is the service, what is it trying to do, prevent spam and malware coming into your organization, some of the benefits there, really simple administration in terms of how we tie that together using the same sorts of technology, transport rules to provide that blocking and filtering capabilities, and then some of the more complex aspects, adding in directory synchronization so that we really can provide intelligent routing or intelligent rules and policies based on attributes within your Active Directory. So that said then, let's look at the key capabilities, the anti-spam filtering. What you'll see here, and as I mentioned earlier, is that we really have this capability for multi-layered protection. So when we think about this, we look at three main areas to start off with. We've got this concept of connection filtering, very straightforward. This is operating at the TCP layer, essentially. So we're really just looking at IP addresses. And, Microsoft's been doing this for a long time. We also partner with other organizations that have built up, block lists and so on. And we can then take information also from mail that we're seeing coming into some of our other hosted services, for example, like Outlook.com, previously Hotmail. So really building up a very clear picture of who it is that's sending out spam mail. And so by doing this, we can block up to 80%, roughly, give or take, up to 80% of the spam, purely based on IP block and allow lists. So that really does give a large chunk of the traffic and just drops that. We don't essentially capture that and then quarantine it or anything. We're very, very confident that that information is spam, and we should just drop those connections. Moving on then, we look at sender and recipient filtering. And this then takes it down to the SMTP verb layer. So when we're saying hello, who the sender is, who the server that's sending that message is, we're taking it down again to that level. And again, based on the various lists that we've built up, we can be very confident around those lists. One of the fundamental principles of the service is making sure that we don't create both false positives, but of course also false negatives. And we've really done an awful lot of work to operate that. And actually, we've recently extended our SLA around that area. One of the things we could follow up with perhaps is the SLA documentation that covers this in more depth. So that's really focusing at the two layers. This is the two sort of simplistic layers, IP address and then SMTP sender and recipient information. Then we take it down into the content filtering. And this is really where things get clever. Fundamentally at the content filtering layer, this is where we've got all the intelligence and all the rules and all the regular expressions and so on. Essentially, this is our rule engine that goes into blocking and so on, the more complex spam. So this is taking perhaps 5% of the total volume of spam, and we build this up based on heuristic technologies, fingerprinting type technologies, really trying to understand URLs. We've got a huge database of URLs and the types of URLs that come into sort of phishing attacks, for example. So really comprehensive filtering that's getting right down into the nuts and bolts of message headers, elements of the content, MIME types, and so on, to really get into the nitty-gritty of spam filtering. So to go into some of this in a little bit more depth then, the connection filtering, really this is based around IP allow and block lists. Now, of course, we've got our rule lists, but as far as you as an end customer goes, well, you can of course come in and set up your own lists here. So you can opt to use Microsoft maintained reputable sender list. That's something which means that we can happily trust mail coming from various locations and just have that come through. But you can also set up your own white and black lists, allow block lists, so that you can really then maintain those yourselves. And you've got an element of control around those as well. We can do that by single IP addresses or ranges of addresses as well. We've now got more delineation between different types of spam, or perhaps different confidences of spam, should we say. So we've got obvious spam, and then we've got high confidence spam. And, obvious spam is stuff that we're pretty sure is spam, but, maybe you want to receive that perhaps and filter that yourselves, look at that in perhaps junk mail, for example. And then high confidence spam, which, again, we're very, very highly confident that that is actually spam. So, again, we've got then different actions that you can take. And some of those actions here are at the bottom of the slide. We can delete messages, and we could assign a different action to different levels of spam in this sense. So, for example, delete, we could quarantine, and then administrators can go in and review that. We could add an X header, and then you can process that X header on premises with your on-premises mail system to do something with that, perhaps route it in a certain way, or some other change. Again, we could do one of the traditional ones, prepending the subject line with text. There's often you get messages that come through that say spam in capital letters, or possible junk or something like that. Equally, we could redirect it to an email address, although realistically doing something like that, that mailbox is going to fill up pretty quickly. Maybe you perhaps consider using quarantine for that instead. Or, of course, the other one here is the move to junk email folder. And that is what we recommend, and there's got a slight section of the presentation on that in a moment. So alongside some of these, we've also got a significant level, and you'll see this, and put up the admin interface a little bit later on. You'll see this in the advanced options, really giving you a level of control to go in and tweak and tune the system as per your requirements. One of the key things here is a new ability to go in and be specific about what you want to happen to bulk mail. So this is something which in sort of mail hygiene terms is called bacon. And really this is something that's essentially bulk mail. It's the sort of newsletters, circulars and so on, which maybe some organizations will want to actually receive, but others others won't, and you want that level of control. And so we've got that in the service here, allows you to come in. Of course, we've also got a whole range of different techniques here, different types of fingerprinting, different ability to go in and look at URL types, abilities to go in and define how you want to deal with SPF records, the Sender Policy Framework records, which define controls around spoofing, whether we want to accept certain types of HTML tags, so form embedded objects. So really the ability to come in and just be quite specific. If you're getting, if you're seeing a particular type of mail or someone's particularly targeting your organization, you can come in and have that granular level of control that you might want. Another example, for example, image links to remote sites or numeric IP addresses in a URL. So common things that show up in phishing or tracking attempts by people trying to attack organizations. And then the final point here is development around the concept of languages and regions. Now, FOPPE had the concept of different languages and being able to block mail and set policies based on different languages. But what we've now got in Exchange Online Protection is actually an extension of that around blocking email based on geography. And again, it's one of those interesting things that we've had around development, really. It's one of those things that Microsoft researchers had a lot of input in. Really, how do you define where mail's coming from? How do you make sure that you're not introducing false positives, which is, again, as I say, one of these core principles. We don't want to introduce false positives because that obviously causes people to miss mail that they were expecting. So we've got the ability to filter on, I believe it's 86 different languages. and to select the various different geographical regions around blocking and have that incorporated into policy. So what do we actually do with mail then that is actually defined as junk mail? Well, fundamentally, we've actually got a place for this to live. And if you're familiar, obviously, with the junk mail folder in Outlook, you'll know where we suggest that this mail should go to. So it really is the recommendation that end users would prefer to have this mail that might be considered junk come into the interface that they're used to dealing with email through, which is Outlook. So the junk mail folder in Outlook enables you to have a safe area there of various elements of those mails are restricted and turned off if they do come in, so the images and so on automatically, various things are safely held there. But it means that we can then go in as a user and manage safe and block sender lists through the Outlook interface. And then those will be picked up by directory synchronization and pushed back into the service. So we really do have that capability to tie up through a familiar interface the access to that mail that's been considered junk. Of course, there are other options here. So, what various other services have, or various other systems out on the marketplace, are the concept of quarantine. And, within Exchange Online Protection, this is also something that we can provide. You'll see in the admin interface here, the quarantine area. And this is something which is an administrative function. We can come in here and we can search for mail that has been quarantined for whatever reason, be that spam or be that something that we've set up a policy to hold for whatever reason. So this is something which occasionally causes a challenge. Some end users have been familiar with an interface whereby they can come in and manage their own email through, or their own quarantined email through a web browser. We really do feel that Outlook is the best place for that. In this instance, as I say, this is an administrative-only piece, but it is something which we're developing around. We've got an update coming shortly to provide notifications to end users, where they will also be able to release mail through there if that's a choice that you take as an administrative team. So, all in all, there's some flexibility here, but this is something which warrants a look when you're deciding on taking up the online service. So, just to build this through then, the final aspect really here is just to understand what happens if we do get a message which is not quite what we were expecting the right result from. So, were we expecting a message to come through, or were we expecting something to be blocked, false negatives and false positives? So, we've got a couple of tools here. The Microsoft Junk Email Reporting add-in is something which adds into Outlook and actually then gives a new interface to allow this management through the junk email folder. And again, this is why I think it's important that this mail is sent through into the junk mail folder, because it does allow us to make use of this very familiar interface for most people. We can come in here and we can report that it's junk, we can block the sender, but we can also do various other things by adding in the process to submit messages to Microsoft. So we can see here that when you report messages as junk, they're actually sent to Microsoft for analysis, which will then help improve our algorithms. And of course, we've got teams of people around the world, our spam analysts, who are multilingual, understand lots of different languages for where mail might be coming from, and write the rules that go into our content filtering engine, which then can be updated very frequently. And this is one of the ways we do this. So if we get some sort of new threat that comes into the space, we can respond to that very quickly through the use of these sorts of feedback mechanisms to take a sort of pulse of what's going on in people's inboxes. Okay, so we've looked at some of the components. How does this hang together as part of the whole service. You can see here we've got the concept of inbound filtering. A message comes in and it's routed to the Exchange Online Protection data center based on the MX record for that domain. So pretty standard stuff, really. What you can see here, though, again, in a change from where we were with FOPPE. With FOPPE, we just had a single MX record that you pointed your domain at, and that was as simple as that. In EOP, we've changed things slightly because what we can now do is regional routing. So we've had the capability in the US for a little while to be able to do this, but we now have the concept of regional routing in Europe as well, which means that depending on where your billing address is, we set your tenant up in that location, and we can then restrict mail to route only via those data centers. So obviously this is important for certain industries, regulated industries, and others around data protection and so on. This is something which can help to meet those requirements. So you'll see that mail comes in. As we talk through, it hits the IP-based connection filtering, and we look at envelope filtering around the SMTP layer. And at that point, once we've decided, yeah, we're going to accept that message or not, we then take it through the next stage of the process. So virus scanning happens. We go through the multiple antivirus engines, which really enable us to be pretty certain that we're going to meet, we're going to capture any of the known viruses out there, and we have 100% SLA on capturing the known viruses out there. And then we move through, as long as there's nothing hidden in those messages, we move through to the policy enforcement stage. So this is really where you have the option to come in and set up policy, set up your safe or blocked lists, whether that's by IP or whether that's various other rules. You can come in and customize this and set up the myriad of different rules that you might want to do. One of the options there is to quarantine messages for further inspection. So you could take that action, for example. But assuming we're happy and the message passes through, then we move on to the spam content filtering element. And so the reason for putting this element last, one of the guys in the product group was telling me, is fundamentally because, of course, this means we're scanning with the most costly elements of the service in terms of resources. We're scanning the smallest number of messages because obviously other ones have been blocked or filtered beforehand. So at this point, we go through the huge number of checks and various elements that we talked about, things like heuristic scanning, things like breaking down the content, understanding sort of fingerprinting, doing checking of sender policy framework or sender ID filters and so on, and then doing the things like international spam. So really coming in and getting into the guts of the message, understanding what's going on there. And at that point, then, we will deliver that message on to your network. And, of course, as I said, we can hold that if your network is down for any reason. And throughout this process, once we've had that delivery, our team of spam analysts might receive false positive and negative notifications through the tools that we've discussed. And this is how we then go in and iterate those rule engines and continue to build the level of effectiveness there. So that is inbound. Obviously, that's what most people imagine as a filtering service. But one of the things which, of course, we also do is outbound filtering. And this really gives you some really significant peace of mind and service around what's actually coming out of your organization. It's just really protecting you and protecting your brand in that respect. So we're doing all the same sorts of checks. Obviously, we've got virus scanning, we've got policy enforcement that you can obviously set up on outbound messages, and all those policies are essentially the transport rules that we'd be familiar with from Exchange. And then we check out around the spam, and we're basically giving these messages a spam score as they're going out. So we've got three mechanisms then for messages to go out to the internet. We've got the outbound pool. This is the one in green. And, fundamentally, there's broken down into different areas. We've got, I think, 10 sub-pools, which this is broken down into. Because what we really want to make sure is that in no way does the service get blocklisted in some way. So we've got various different IPs to send mail out through, different pools. And this is just purely for the mail that we think is absolutely fine. So we've got a lot of different routes out, and this helps us make sure that we can always deliver your messages and it will be accepted with good faith by other services. Then we've got an outbound delivery pool called the bulk delivery pool. This is doing exactly what it says. If organizations are sending out bulk mail, maybe the sort of newsletters or customer updates and so on, but if they're sending out significant amounts of mail, which is not what we would classify as spam, but is something which may be considered by others to be unwanted, then we've got a bulk delivery pool, and that gives some flexibility for those mails to go out but not affect the main reputation of the service. And then we've got the high-risk delivery pool for things like NDRs, for things like messages which really do seem a bit risky. And from there, we've actually got the ability to put in another feedback loop. So this is something where we can put in the notification, bring that to the attention of the company. Are you realizing these messages are going out? Let's have a look at them and so on. Set up notifications to really make sure that we can do proactive monitoring and actually alert you. And that's something, again, which is a significant improvement from the FOPPE service. In the past, we did that monitoring, but there wasn't an automated method for letting you know. Whereas in EOP, we've got the ability for you to come in and actually add in a person email address or a person to be notified based on what's going on through these more high-risk delivery pools. Okay, so that's anti-spam. What about the other key component, anti-malware? Well, anti-malware technology is, in terms of control, relatively simple. Obviously, in terms of technology, clearly complex behind the scenes. But really, we've got a couple of things to bear in mind here. We can do a bunch of the traditional stuff around notifications, for example, notifying internal and external senders around what's going on. We can do things around blocking the message or changing the attachments or removing an attachment that causes an alert and replacing it with some default text, and then notifying various different administrators as we might want to. So you can see there the concept of notifications. The other thing just to highlight here really is that Exchange 2013 on premises is the first version of Exchange to have antivirus, anti-malware technology actually built into the product as well. So just worth calling out, obviously this is an Exchange Online protection session, but this interface is also going to be familiar to those of you that have looked at Exchange 2013 because it does have similar controls around what we can do on premises. And we really feel that, again, as we tie these two things together, you get the benefits of the simple protection, basic protection on premises with a single engine in 2013, but also tying it up into the cloud with Exchange Online protection, and then the multiple engine scanning and the greater level of control. Okay, so really that takes the protection elements, malware, obviously, antivirus technology, and the spam level multi-layered protection. But what about the stuff that you really want to control? Well, this is really where policy comes in. And in particular, this is where you're really going to integrate with or interface with the admin tools. So what do they look like? Well, we've got a much more streamlined management console. Again, I'd highly recommend that anyone who wants to try this out just goes along and signs up for an Office 365 trial. You get access to, obviously, all the features and functionality, but you can play with that then in your own environment for 30 days and really get to grips with what's going on here. So you can see in this screenshot, this is the main area of the Office 365 Admin Center. And the key thing is that we've got a bunch of reports around mail flow and around protection. And so this means that really straight up front and central, you've got the ability to see what's going on within the organization in terms of mail flow. So again, something which has changed from FOPPE. Previously, this was all in a separate console. Now we've come together in a single console, allowing you to manage this all together with the rest of the Office 365 service and with Exchange Online Protection in particular. The other thing which has fundamentally changed is that instead of using policy rules as we had in FOPPE, we've come across to using transport rules. So we're using that familiar technology based around Exchange, and we've taken the best fit of both solutions. You know, the transport rules did things like exceptions, the ability to say, well, you know, I want this to happen except if it's for the CEO, for example. But you know, FOPPE policy rules did things like the ability to test a rule before you actually put it into action, and the ability to set time-based criteria. And so we've really brought these two elements together to make sure that you've got the best of both worlds, and you can see here this very familiar type of interface, which is, of course, the way we set up transport rules. We've got a huge range of operators. You know, we can come in and set conditions, things like the message size, things like, you know, where's the message going, inside, outside the organization. We can then create actions. What are we going to do about that? Maybe we're going to moderate it. Maybe we're going to block that message. All sorts of different things we can do. Maybe route it to someone in particular. And then, as I say, the exceptions, again, based around the same element of different criteria that you can set. And then, really interestingly, we've got a bunch of these other pieces here. The ability to stop processing rules, the ability to defer on rule processing failures. So if, for example, we can't process a particular mail because it's just too big, too complex, then we can actually defer and have another go at that in the future when maybe there's more resources available. So really, it's the ability to do a lot of control here. And bear in mind that these can be tied up with your on-premises transport rule stack, so you can really match things up there to provide a single kind of rule engine. We can then set audit levels again. You know, what's going to go on? You know, how heavily do we rate this as a threat, for example, and that can trigger certain things in the background. So a lot of granularity, and really you can come up with a huge range of policies to fit any need. The next slide just talks through a little bit more of these different types of conditions. You can see here that the various different ones. You know, sender is X, Y, and Z. The recipient is X, Y, and Z, and this can be obviously where we take groups out of your organization. So if, for example, you've done the directory sync and brought in those objects into the cloud, then we can use those in these rules. And that's how we can do clever things like intelligent routing. Really routing messages a certain way out of a certain connector based on the membership of a group, for example. So really, again, quite significant improvements there. Another major improvement from what we had in FOPPE is the ability now to do attachment scanning. So we can now come in, look into multiple nested attachments, a vast array of different types of attachment we look at. So really, again, some big improvements which mean that in terms of the efficacy of the technology, we can really make sure that you've got control over what comes in and out of your organization. Okay. So that's looking at the conditions, and you know, this is drilling down a little bit further even so. So we've got the sender and then all these different types. As I say, you know, really you could take half an hour just going through all these different types of things that you can set it on, and I would again highly recommend going in and getting yourself set up with a trial to take a look at those. Looking at some of the actions here, you can see that we've got various possibilities again, forwarding the message, redirecting the message, all these sorts of things that I've touched on already. But again, just take your time, go through these, understand what's possible. A couple to call out in addition to the ones we've talked about, requiring TLS encryption. You know, we can make sure that we're securing particular messages that we pick up. We can also do things like rights management, or we can do things like exchange-hosted encryption, whereby we are using a really sort of customer-friendly version of encryption that we can send mails out to customers as. So lots of flexibility there. And then finally, again, a reiteration of the different rule options that we've got. You can see here, particularly one that we haven't called out so far, is the one at the bottom here. How do we want to enforce this rule? Well, we could enforce it, but we could, of course, just test it. And we can test that so that actually we can see whether or not we've set up the regular expression correctly, for example, or the capturing correctly, so that we're not going to be capturing a ridiculous number of messages that we weren't ever intending to capture. Okay, so all in all, to look at the interface, I think one of the key things for any organization when we go into the realms of an online service is reporting, because really one of the things you want is control. You want that aspect of understanding of what's going on within the service. And so one of the things which is really exciting is the level of reporting. I've talked about some of the basics, which are a fairly significant range of pre-set up reports. You can see here, for example, inbound spam filtered, giving you an idea around where things are being blocked, helping you to understand really the types of threats or the types of content that is being filtered. And we can see that who's actually receiving that spam. So maybe certain people are being targeted. And we can capture this then over a 60-day period for this sort of summary data. You know, some other examples are outbound malware detection. Again, you can see a little peak there on the 27th of the 10th, 2012. You know, that's perhaps an area that we really wanted to figure out what went on there. You know, was that a particular PC or group of PCs that got attacked and who started sending out spam? So, you know, some of those things that we can really detect. Now, also, we've got the ability to go in and see, you know, the top malware recipients and so on. So, really, some pretty straightforward information, but presented in a nice, streamlined, easy-to-access sort of way. And the final one here is outbound suspicious filtering summary. So, all sorts of different types of metrics that we can monitor and track. So that's the sort of basic reporting kind of concept. But one of the things which I think is particularly exciting is this Excel reporting. We've actually got an API built into the service which we can tie in to with Excel. Now, interestingly, you could, of course, write your own reporting engine as well, which, you know, it's just a standard published API. So if you wanted to take things even further, you could do so. And that really talks to some of the flexibility of the service based around these sort of standard published APIs. But I think you'll agree, really, that you know, this interface gives you the ability to really drill into the concept of reporting. You can get right down to things like message ID, exactly what's gone on with a particular message. And this Excel workbook really connects in. It can be refreshed, and you can bring that data down, and it enables you to then build up that kind of historical context of what's going on with you in your organization, and really get down and dirty with the detail of exactly what's going on within the organization. So giving you a lot of flexibility to track and trend data over time. Now, the other aspect, of course, of any kind of filtering service is message tracing. We really want to be knowing what's going on. And again, some big improvements here. We can use wildcards for multiple email addresses. So, for example, you know, star@domain.com, or we might have user alias at star.com. You can really put in those wildcards to pick up that. One thing to note is that we're keeping data for 7 days in terms of tracing. It is accessible via a support request for up to 30 days. But what we've actually found in looking at the service is if someone's going to request something, it's going to most often happen within 48 hours. So that's what we're looking at. We can do, when we do bring back the data, we can bring back, you know, send the recipient information about the subject, delivery status, what happened to that date and time, and so on. And we can actually also get the message ID from the reports as well, so we can then track that further as it may have occurred into the on-premises solution. So, again, some improvements there and abilities to just go and search and bring that information about messages all within this single console. So we've talked about a bunch of the differences between Exchange Online Protection and the previous version, FOPPE, throughout this session. But this slide really just highlights a few of them in one place. And I think the key thing really is that we've taken across all of the best bits of FOPPE, but enhance those. So some of the things that perhaps have changed in terms of name, intelligent routing. We used to have this concept of virtual domains in FOPPE. We're now calling this intelligent routing, using criteria-based routing within Exchange Online Protection. And that's really through the use of the ability to synchronize the directory, bring that directory into Exchange Online Protection, and then use that within our transport rules to route mail perhaps out of a certain connector, for example. Again, improvements around the regional routing. Now we've got the EU and the US covered under that, the ability to keep data in those regions. Again, significant improvements around the regular expression engine. In FOPPE, we had a pretty basic regular expression engine. We've now got the access to the full .NET regular expression engine to let you really go in and be very specific about mail that you want to capture, and then use that testing capability that I mentioned to really make sure that you're not getting that wrong and perhaps capturing all email with the word "and" in it, for example, which of course could be a bit of a faux pas in terms of your career. So all important, the ability to test these sorts of rules. So there are some of the changes, and obviously a lot more information highlighted about those in our sort of what's new platform on the TechNet site, which you can go into to get a lot more detail there. So really coming to wrap up, what's the availability of Exchange Online Protection? How do you actually get it? Well, if you're a user of Office 365, then you've actually already got it. You're actually already using it. So with the new release of Office 365, which became available in April, this is absolutely just built in. For anyone who's got an older tenant, part of the previous release, or of course anyone that's using the FOPPE product, then there is obviously a migration process underway, and customers will be communicated with prior to their migration. One of the things that we've done and worked really hard on is to make sure that we can migrate policy settings. So really, we're going to be bringing all that across for you. If you've got any weird and wonderful things that we can't automatically migrate, we will of course get in contact and make sure we work with you to actually do that. But aside from that, if you're a new customer and you want to come along and just sign up, well, you can absolutely do that. As I say, go and get a 30-day trial, try it out, get it up and running, and you can do that in literally in a few minutes, certainly an hour or less. And then you've got various options. You've got a standalone version, and this really gives you just purely the Exchange Online Protection functionality, and you can tie that up to protect any on-premises mail system. Of course, then you've also got the ability to get this as part of your Exchange Enterprise CAL with the services software assurance, or of course as part of your Enterprise CAL suite. So a lot of customers actually have access to the Exchange Online Protection service as part of their licensing, but maybe aren't using it for one reason or another. And certainly one of those things will be very much worth going to explore that opportunity to really simplify things, take advantage of all the technology that we've looked at and the simplification of the administrative experience, and then bring that to bear on their messaging security. So really to sum up, we've got this ability to have multiple layer protection, whether that's multiple engines for your anti-malware, whether that's multiple levels of spam filtering to really protect you from threats. And it takes advantage of those industry-leading experts, Microsoft security professionals, to really build on what you're already doing on premises. We can enforce a variety of very flexible policies, really come in the simple interface that we saw in the screenshots, get a lot of complexity into simple rules, bring that together with the things like regular expressions and so on, and give you a lot of control around how you filter your mail. And of course, in terms of administration, we really do have this single console, single sign-on, and the ability to use a single directory sync tool to bring all this together into a platform which is really quite straightforward to manage. So with that, I'd be more than happy to take some questions. I think we've got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to come out of my presentation view now and take a look at anything that might have come in the instant messaging window, or people can pipe up on the audio if you're able to do so.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Nathan, so much.